have a couple of, I understand and I appreciated the conversation at PCDC, which resulted in amendments made to the original ordinance that was originally supplied by the American GI Forum. And as was mentioned, you want to make sure these things are actually having the intended impact. So I asked our housing team, Veronica Garcia, thank you for so quickly answering these questions. I asked our housing team, hey, help me understand the difference in supply and distribution of housing units based on the original ordinance versus those under what it would look like based on the amendments. So, Veronica, if you would, for the edification of my colleagues, please share the response.
Yes, thank you. Mayor, Council, good afternoon. Veronica Garcia, Housing Director. Under the original ordinance that was passed in 2021, that only applied to housing source of income protections in city properties that received city incentives. So, for example, housing bond funded new rental apartments. So since that time, there have been 85 properties that are impacted by that ordinance. So that's a total of about 18,000 units.
I'm sorry, Veronica, just to clarify, the question was about the ordinance that went into PCDC versus the ordinance that came out.
Mayor,
yes, thank you.
Sure. So then the one that was recommended, there are 357,000 total rental units. And of those, we did not have very good data on how many would be impacted, meaning ownership data for 5 or more units. We can quite easily look up how many units in those properties, how many of those properties have 5 or more units. We have that data that we can share, and that is what I shared, Mayor. In total, of the 357,000 pool of all rental properties, 227 of those are in what we would call multifamily properties. So the property itself has 5 or more units. When we were asked to provide information on more the PCDC amendment, which focuses, instead of geographical, it looks at specific ownership. So what housing provider owns or rents 5 or more units. That is the data that's difficult for us to provide. We don't have it at an aggregate level because we don't have ownership like that. But what we could do is, if there is a violation reported on that ordinance as passed, we would be able to look at those records on a case-by-case basis, so look at that ownership data based on what Bexar County records are, try and determine if that owner does have additional properties and whether or not it would apply.
Sure. There's a request for you to clarify the numbers.
Just so 357,000 properties or
units.
Units.
Okay, great, thank you. Yes.
And
227,000 units would be like a multifamily property. So the property itself has 5 or more units.
Thank you.
Thank you. I want to clarify that because there was potentially some confusion. The amendments have to do with this ordinance only applying to those that own 4 units or more.
5 or more, yes.
5 or more, thank you. 5 or more. That is different than how many units are in a place.
Yes.
And the numbers that you're speaking about speak to the latter. When I asked specifically about how you would enforce an ordinance that is based on how many properties somebody owns, I want to read this verbatim from Veronica, quote, and I've shared this with my colleagues, but the email. Mm-hmm. We can identify which properties contain 5 or more units. However, there is no reliable data source that shows who owns individual properties or units. In addition, owners with multiple properties often create legal entities, LLCs, which further complicates accurate ownership tracking. For enforcement, we would investigate an alleged violation and look at Bexar County Appraisal District ownership for properties on a case-by-case basis. That seems like a very burdensome process. I appreciate the willingness to do it, but I imagine there are better uses of your staff's time and energy and resources, and frankly, just utilizing that for people to actually get housing versus trying to figure out, does this person own them in their name versus do they have LLCs? I mean, that seems like a very difficult enforcement process, which ultimately is a waste of your time and energy, but is also not well serving the veteran. And can anybody imagine truly somebody like Ace trying to navigate something as arduous as that enforcement process. That'd be very, very difficult. And so I want to make sure that we're being thoughtful. So the the amendments were made. There's no data that suggests we can actually enforce that as intended. So I'm concerned about that as well. I'm also concerned. Go ahead, please.
We would look at it on an individual
Sure.
basis
Case
in our
by
team.
case.
What was difficult is to say, kind of like the other data I shared, so how many units citywide would then be impacted by this amendment? So again, we'd have to really go case by case or have additional time to try and see ownership tracking.
Let me add
understood.
that
Go ahead.
I think what you mean by case is if you all approve the ordinance and there's a complaint, then that's where the staff will dig down into, the ownership aspects of it.
Understood.
Yeah.
But I mean, the